Welcome to Napa Valley Wine Academy Bootcamp webinar. Today we're going to talk about the journey of our students and the journey through WSET Level 3 while taking a bootcamp in Napa Valley. So the bootcamp, it's an immersive experience that takes 7 days with time in the classroom and time in the vineyards. The students are able to see the other side besides the theory of the production. So we take students to the vineyards, to wineries, and students are able to also taste over 100 wines during the course and immerse themselves in the world of wine with leading producers, winemakers, experts from the field to gain the knowledge and to pass this amazing qualification. So, my today's guests and panelists are Cynthia Spannell. Cynthia is a PhD, retired professor, social science researcher, and horse breeder, trainer, and rider. Lives in Texas Hill Country APA, and became interested in wine as the industry developed around her. Adopted wine study and wine drinking as a retirement passion project. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you.
So another panelist is David Levine. He is an MD pathologist at the Medical University of South Carolina, not in the wine industry, but a wine enthusiast. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Anne Ziata, chef turned sommelier working in New York City. Very happy to have you here. Very happy to see you again. You have joined our bootcamp in 2001, 2002, and 2003. You had some different experiences because the bootcamps every time bring in a little different flair or visit different producers, but the educational background and idea is the same. And I would like to start us off with a first question and start talking about those initial preparations before the examination. So before you arrive to Napa for the week-long study journey, you were sent a textbook, you were given an access to the online course designed by the Napa Valley Wine Academy. And what I would like to ask you is, what were the pros and cons of studies? What were the things that help you pass and help you to go through the examinations? What were the tips and tricks that you were using that were offered also in our programs? And then later on, we also will talk about what didn't work. So, Cynthia, tell us what worked for you.
Well, my experience is perhaps a little bit different than the other two panelists because I actually took the WSET 3 course online from Napa Valley Wine Academy, and I had already scheduled my exam for the year of the pandemic. Of course, then it got canceled, and I had already done most of my study prep, but then that all just came to an end during pandemic year. And I just started out pandemic year like a lot of people, drinking a lot of wine, and then I basically just stopped. So I stopped studying, I stopped drinking. And then when the opportunity to take the 3-day weekend boot camp came up, I immediately signed up for it, hoping that it would reignite my interest and motivate me to start, following through on the exam. Now, prior to, and yes, it definitely worked. I would say it was essential. If I hadn't gone to boot camp, I probably wouldn't have followed through with the exam. But prior to all that, I adopted some study techniques that I still use to this day. And one is to outline chapters in the textbook as I'm reading through them, because that book is so dense with material that I had to boil it down to kind of more comprehensible, smaller chunks of information and like bullet points and things like that. So outlining the chapters as I was just reading through really helped me a lot. And it also gave me a resource to go back to when I did ignite my studies.
Okay, very well. Thank you. David, how's your experience?
Yeah, so my experience, obviously, we all had different experiences. So my experience was I actually went to level three pretty quickly after doing level two. So I did level two and signed up for level three even before I knew I passed level two. And I think that was probably a mistake. And we'll talk about mistakes. And really didn't have a huge amount of time between when I finished level two and then when I went to boot camp. And so um, I failed the first part as I went through, and I think as I was looking at it, I did not spend enough time before coming to boot camp doing this stuff, and I really part of it is the realization of level two, level one to level two, and then level two to level three is really logarithmic and not
Mhm.
just incremental, and
Mhm.
so the amount of material in level three compared to level two is significant, as is the nature of the exam, and so obviously we will talk about what we could have done differently. And for me, ultimately, I think flashcards were the way to go. There are certainly flashcards that are available, but I think making your own, that was what really sort of pushed me over the edge, and that's what took me in to ultimately pass the exam.
Have you used any of the online resources before you started, before you came to APA?
I did, and I used I went through read the book and went through the online courses, but I was not being very systematic, and I certainly wasn't outlining, and so it was much more superficial, which got me through level two easily. But for level three, is you need more than that.
Thank you. And what helped you to
Yeah,
push you through the passing point?
I think I had a long time. I had 3 years between my WSET 2 and 3, and the whole time every day was still studying wine. I did other kind of wine tracks and was working, and so it never really got like a break, which was really great. So um, I felt pretty good when I walked into level 3, but I still did a ton of studying. I did the whole online course like a few months before the in-person course, and the biggest thing for me was like the essay questions, because that was not a skill I was used to, kind of like really having to get really specific in how I'm going to articulate an answer, and kind of develop like a supporting argument for my answer. So I like copy pasted all the questions and just kind of kept reviewing them, and I would replace them with different regions and make sure I could um, just like really hammer in that info, and also highlighting in books. When I first started studying, I would never write in a book, but now I have to write in the book, otherwise nothing's going to stick.
What about the online resources?
Yeah, those were great. Also, I just copied all the questions they would ask at the end of each portion, and then make a little quiz for myself, and just keep reviewing. Yeah, every day, even if it's just 5 minutes, just look at the notes. Yeah.
Okay, how much time did you spend? Let's talk about how much time did you take from the beginning of your study, and how much time would you put in right before you came in order to prepare? Cynthia.
Oh, it's hard to say because I basically studied for it twice, right? So I studied for it before the pandemic and then stopped for almost 2 years and then had to go back and basically start from scratch. But I put a lot of time into it. It actually got me questioning whether at my age, am I already getting senile or something? Because I had a really difficult time memorizing that quantity of material. And so it was hours and hours. I mean, basically every day I would say at least an hour a day, most days of every week for maybe 2 months prior. And then, especially towards the last 2 weeks before the exam, just constantly reviewing as much as I could because you have to keep so much of that material on the front, at the front of your mind, right? You can't, it needs to be immediately available to you when you go into the exam. So,
True, but when you got to the exam, um, did you find that information that you were asked for was very concise, or did you think that you still had to had a lot of detail? Um, how How was it? What was your feeling? Because once you get to the exam, you have this feeling that sometimes it's like, oh, it actually is easier than I thought, or the other way
Yes.
around. How was it for you?
It was far easier than I anticipated.
Hmm.
And so I would say, in a way, looking back, I was over prepared, but who wants to go into an exam risking that, that you would be underprepared? No, I thought it was easy, especially the multiple choice component.
Hmm.
I spent the entire time up to the very last minute writing the essays, so I had a lot to say, in the exam, and it was easy to answer because I had prepared so well. And that's a really good feeling to walk out of there going, I know I did well on this. So
That's perfect. But that's the
yeah,
thing.
but it took a big commitment of time. I mean, you can't underestimate the amount of time that you really need to put into it. So.
True. But what I want to point out about this exam is that you really want to show a broad understanding of the subject. Very often,
Mhm.
students focus and zoom in on particular subjects, and that's great. But very often, they're missing the overall understanding in the answers. And this exam is truly asking, and checking, do you really understand the word of wine at this particular level, which is level 3? But you have to sort of go between, bigger picture and then adjusting the right information to it as well, but showing that you have broad understanding. Thank you. Uh, David, how how was that for you? You've already mentioned that you didn't have enough time, but if you were going to go back, what would be the things that you would you would change? To how much time would you rather spend for the
Right.
preparation?
Yes, and I probably had enough time overall. Truthfully, I didn't spend the time that I should have, which is what I would have changed. The and I think my downfall initially was not realizing the essay questions. The multiple choice were fairly easy, and I think I certainly had enough understanding through the boot camp and through all the materials to do that. But I did not spend actually I didn't spend any time, which was the mistake, prior to coming to boot camp to actually do the practice questions and to go through and really sort of figure out how to take the essay portion well. And certainly that was emphasized during the boot camp, but by that point it was a little bit too late to go back. And so certainly in terms of coming back and saying, okay, what do I need to do? That was what I needed to do and really go through all of those sample essay questions. And as was mentioned, you just put those in other areas. And then for me, I made flashcards out of all of those essay questions. So basically then it's like, okay, whatever the question is, what are the 5 points that are needed for that? And then if you change it to a different region, what are the 5 points that or 7 or whatever it is that are needed for that? And that was very helpful in terms of actually sort of cogitating and figuring out how I was going to put put that essay to work. And so that for me was the what really needed to be done beforehand that wasn't done previously. I think in terms of the reading and reviewing and viewing the things online, that I did, but I did not prepare, nor was I really prepared for the essay component of the exam.
So practicing the short written answers is the
Yeah,
key.
yeah.
And yes, historically, we'll see that that's the biggest challenge. And this is one of the biggest advice. And you already mentioned that before. That was the challenging thing for you. But you did start preparing for short written answers ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
What was your technique? How did you break down the questions? How did you talk about the questions to prepare yourself for that last push in the last week during bootcamp?
Yeah, so I would go back and look at all the past essay questions, answer them best I could, and then rewrite in the correct response anything that I missed, and just getting really clear on like knowing each region and just knowing this, like just what are they asking for? What do they want? Can I accurately kind of describe the climate and just be as concise as possible? Like they're not looking for me to write a book about it, but like just, really kind of distill it down and cover everything that I needed. Yeah.
Yeah, really focusing also on those natural and human factors. I
Mhm.
feel like that's one of the important parts as well for every major regions when you're preparing for short written answers. Okay, very well. So from here, from the preparation, you arrived to Napa, and I would like to focus now on your experiences. How the bootcamp experiences help you to start prepare for the exam, and how did they enhance the altogether your study path? Cynthia.
Well, as I already mentioned, I think without the boot camp, I would not have continued on and finished up the course. It was a real inspiring experience. And for me, one of the biggest parts was the tasting component because when I took my class online, they did not have the wine kits or anything. So I didn't have an opportunity to really calibrate my palate until I went to boot camp. And to be able to taste with Peter Marks in the morning and drink champagne or whatever, it was just an amazing experience. So it was not only transferring knowledge and giving me the confidence to be a better taster, it was just super fun too. And that's a big important component of it for me because the study is so dense and abstract in many respects. You're looking at graphs and different things. And being at the boot camp really brought it all back to life and made it much more concrete and fun. It was super fun. I enjoyed meeting the other students in the the workshops, and it also gave me a sense of where I was in my studies. Like, did I know enough? Because there were people in our group that already passed the exam. There were some that were just now getting ready to study. Some had just completed the class. So it gave me a lot of confidence just knowing where I stood vis-a-vis the other students. So
Perfect. Thank you. Um, David, so one part is the tasting, which we know that looking at the statistics, that once you get into the classroom, about 95% of those students do pass the tasting. I know it's a part of the very often an anxiety that I'm not sure, if I can do this when students come in, and then we know that once you really take that time and participate in a tasting, that really pushes through and help you develop those skills. But we also are looking at experiences like grape growing, winemaking, and regions and the regional knowledge throughout the major regions. So, oh, David, what helped you? Which part helped you, or which part was the most beneficial in your studies?
Well, as I would echo that, it was really the tasting was the most important for the boot camp. Again, you can get a lot of the other stuff from reading online and putting in all the work. But I think the tasting is certainly what I came into most worried about and what I came out of least worried about. And certainly, as you mentioned, I passed that part no problem in terms of the first time through. Um, and really being able to sit in a room with your fellow students, with your instructor, and really gauge your palate and start to put everything together, as well as putting it into the WSET format and doing that over and over again. And that repetition was just wonderful. In terms of the other components of it, it's certainly very nice to go. Really, the cooperage. We've got the picture behind you. The cooperage was wonderful. That was an experience that I'd not been to. Obviously, I've been to many wineries and vineyards over the years, but I had never had the chance to go to a cooperage, and that was really sort of brought that whole component into it. And for me, that was probably the best non-studying component of the week out at Napa.
Perfect. Thank you. Anne,
Yeah,
same.
mhm.
Yeah.
I actually wasn't totally planning on taking the WSET 3, but was wanting to do a wine trip, and so I looked up the Napa Valley Wine Academy and I saw what trips they had, and then I saw one trip was just, in Napa with the course, but I saw the itinerary and I was like, you know what? I did 1 and 2. It certainly wouldn't hurt to do 3, and then I also get to, you know, go to visit all these places. And also it just seemed like fun. I'm like, oh, you get to have a dinner with the winemaker. You get fed. I'm like, this sounds awesome. So that was definitely a big pull to have me do the program. Yeah.
Okay. So with that, if I can ask you, what was your the memory that you have that stood out, that was an experience like no other from this trip that you took to Napa? Cynthia.
Oh, well, there were many, but I already mentioned Peter Marks. I was just amazed. I really enjoy tasting with him. I wish I could do that every week. But also going to hear the winemakers and wine growers talk about all the challenges they face year to year. And then that's related directly to the wines we would be tasting at their wineries, right? And that's what I think really helped brought the material in the textbook to life. When they're talking about climate change or drought, at the time there was still in a big drought, uh, you know, temperature changes, altitude changes in the valley, and how that impacts the wines we were tasting, and then how that influences their winemaking techniques and so forth. So it really brought to life all of that section of the material for me. And I remember especially there was this, like, I don't know, I call them the rebel winemakers that were in kind of an industrial park, and
Jason Coleman,
yeah, they allowed
you
people to
went
do
to
punch
scratch that?
rounds and things. So yeah, that was a really great experience too. And the
Thank you.
dinners, the food every morning, that was amazing. We don't get food that good out here in Texas. So.
Well, when it comes to Jason, last year we actually, with the vintage being slightly different and a little later, actually the first boot camp was able to stomp the grapes when they have one
Oh,
wine
okay.
contact.
Yeah.
And it so happened, normally it happens in August for them, but this year, with 3 weeks of the 3 weeks, later vintage, we were able to stomp the grapes with the boot campers. It was super fun.
I bet.
So yeah, even though we may visit some of the same places, each year it's really different experience, because we, at the time when you arrive, we walk into the to the cellar, and we're actually experiencing what's happening in the cellar, what
Mhm.
is, what kind of fruit is coming in that particular day, and you can get those hands dirty. I know some of you did with the punch downs and pump overs and cleaning tanks as well. So David, you mentioned the cooperage. What else?
I did. So certainly the cooperage was a big one. The other was the with Jason, and so we did some destemming, and so we took a went dumped the grapes into the destemmer and put all that through, and so actually being a part of the working component of the making of the wine was really excellent, and again sort of brings it to life, and it's those things that you don't necessarily get to see when you're just visiting a winery or visiting the vineyards.
Yeah, we'll definitely take you backstage.
Yeah.
And what was yours?
Yeah, I think the backstage component when we went to Opus One, and I'm like, no one in the world could get this experience of being with them at 5 a.m., watching them pick grapes, and then we got we were there for like, it felt like 8 hours. We were there forever. We saw every corner of the place, and it just felt really lucky. I was like, unless I worked here, I think I would never get this in-depth tour, and yeah, that was amazing.
That was, I have to say, that was amazing experience for all of us as well, spending a day in Opus and following grapes from the vineyard through the whole process, through the winery process, being able to talk to winemakers, so being able to talk to actually every person at their station where their part of work is being done in front of our eyes. That was a stunning experience.
Hmm.
Thank you. Uh, so, I would like to ask you now about the influence of the bootcamp on your personal and professional development. I know some of you have some great future plans. How did the participation in the bootcamp influence your life?
Well, I will repeat myself, but if I hadn't gone to boot camp, I wouldn't have finished WSET 3. I don't think it was an inspiration. I love meeting the other students. I'm still in touch with some of them. I'm in touch with you, obviously. And just listening to everybody talk about their experiences, I'm thinking like, well, maybe I should just retake the class and go to boot camp again because, like Anita said, just as a wine experience, not leading to an exam. So, but I'm definitely sure that if I hadn't gone, I would have not pursued I would not have finished the exam. So,
So
big
that's
impact
one
on me.
thing. But there are some great plans. I don't know if you want to share them with us yet, but you have future plans connected to wine.
Well, before the pandemic, I was starting to write. I did some writing for the Wine and Food Foundation of Texas and started to write about wine. And I kind of got hooked on the idea of writing about wine, and mainly as just a personal accomplishment, not to as a career. The pandemic killed all that off. And so, but now I'm thinking about starting back up again and writing about the wines of it's any place where Spanish is spoken and wine is grown. So that would be Spain, Latin America, Mexico, basically. And so maybe I'll start that blog again. And then I may also start doing some writing for Texas Wine Lover, which is a website here in Texas. Just met with the owner of that website last week and kind of got inspired, like, okay, well, maybe I'll write a little bit about Texas too. So we'll see. It's
That
hard
sounds
when you're
fabulous.
retired. I mean, I have so many choices of things to do when I'm retired. So it's hard to focus on just one thing. And I'm doing more wine
Absolutely.
travel with Napa Valley Wine Academy. So,
Yeah, we've been to some of the Spanish-speaking countries
yes,
uh,
Chile.
as well. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, David. How did the influence your uh, personal and professional development?
Right. It certainly changed the way I was looking at it. I actually also looked at the initial boot camp as more of a wine experience type of thing, and again, the exam was sort of secondary. And initially, I thought, well, if I never pass it, I never pass it. But it was wonderful regardless. But it has sort of ignited a wine passion, and well, I'm still working, but it is certainly a thought for once I get to the retirement, whether I move into something wine related at that point. And I'm still contemplating the possibility of doing the diploma. So we'll see.
Right.
I would not. When I was going into this, I said level 3 and I'm done. But actually, it's certainly ignited the passion to want to keep going deeper into it, and so it's definitely gotten me deeper into the world of wine. Certainly,
That's called the wine bag. The one invites you, you just keep going.
yeah,
You go to the next stage and the next stage. And once you achieve and get to that top of one mountain, it's like, oh, there's another.
yes, absolutely.
And how about you?
Yeah. So every sommelier I've ever worked with has worked some sort of harvest or been on the field in some way. And I saw how much that expanded their understanding and just appreciation, just their overall, well-roundedness as a som. And so I was like, all right, I need to get myself out there and seeing what a harvest is like. And, wasn't really in a space to like take off for a couple months of work to do it. So this was kind of perfect to experience it for a week. And, So yeah, I think I just have so much better understanding when I'm reading about different producers or just different regions, and just kind of like, okay, it's not just this idea in my head of like the ways they might prune it, but like I can actually just get it a lot more now.
Did it help you in any way to achieve your professional goals? You are in the field.
Yeah, I think I certainly feel a lot more confident now that I've passed level three, and I have colleagues who I respect so much that have done level three and beyond. And so, I feel a little less like intimidated. I'm like, okay, I could, I did it too, it's possible. And I definitely studied a lot for it. So, yeah, I feel like I can talk way more confidently about how wine is made and just the whole story of before it gets in the bottle.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So, with your overall experience in the bootcamp, if you were giving an advice to somebody taking level three, WSET level three, or coming for the bootcamp, what would be the one advice you would give them before coming here to Napa?
Personally, I would make sure they realize that 1 week of study is not going to be enough to pass the exam. Even with the best instructors in the world, right? You're still going to have to do more preparation before, in order to pass the exam. I mean, as our colleague here said, he didn't. And it's kind
Perfect.
of, yeah, I
Yeah,
think don't underestimate the amount of preparation you need to do well on the exam or even just pass.
thank you. David.
Yeah, absolutely. That was my failure. So yes, I would echo that as well. I mean, obviously, it depends on what your ultimate goal is. I think for some, it is not necessarily to pass the exam. It is to get more wine knowledge and have a really wonderful experience in Napa, and it provides that. But it is, as was said, it is not enough solely to pass the exam if that is your expectation. And that was, I think, part of my expectation going in, and I did not realize.
Right. Thank you. And
I would say, yeah, know your own kind of gauge of where you're at, and do as much as you can beforehand to go through all the materials, and also go to wine shops near you, go just immerse yourself in it anywhere you are. But also don't stress about it too much. Like, just have fun on the trip, like do your best, but you know also just at the end of the day, just relax and enjoy being in Napa.
perfect. David, some question.
Yeah, no, I think actually the thing that I also really enjoyed, which was not part of the course, but was part of being out in Napa, was the ability to do some of the extra after hour courses that you host at there. There was and this I just think just happened. There was a short course on faults that was really fun
Hmm.
to identify different faults in wines, and they were sort of docked different classes and trying to taste or smell different faults that you see. And then there was another one where you did something. I'm trying to on Wednesday. It was some
Okay,
high end wine.
Denise, Wednesday.
Yes, and that was phenomenal. So,
So
and I
during
don't think,
we
yeah, I
open
don't think those
classic wines
necessarily,
with age.
yeah, I don't think those necessarily need to be part of the course, but they're certainly, I think people should realize that they are available, and they were definitely fun add-ons to do as part of it.
Perfect. Yes, we also run a Monday blind where we prepare for that blind tasting component as well. But thank you for bringing that up. And what about you?
Yeah, I don't really have any major anything big of. I thought we were so well taken care of, and it was so organized, and we got sheets every day with everything we tasted, and we were always properly fed, which was really important when there's a lot of alcohol going around. And yeah, so I thought it was really well done. Yeah.
Well, thank you. We try to bring local. We work with local chefs to bring that flair of the local local cuisine with many worldly influences, but we always try to find chefs that are working with local ingredients. That's what's important for us, and I hope that was showing, because those are not only gourmet lunches, but we've really put in focus on the sustainability and local products, and also supporting the local businesses, which is super important here. Well, I hope you have taken the most amazing memories, because when we're preparing the bootcamp, we're preparing the bootcamps in mind with taking and bringing you here to one of the most amazing immersive experiences that create memories. And I hope that those bootcamps were just that for you, a beautiful memories that you are taking with you, and along the way passing the level 3 examination. And I would like to thank you all for taking the time to spend with us and share those experiences with our students.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you
Thank
for the opportunity to participate. It's been a great experience.
Mhm.
Fun. We always are loving to hear from you. So whenever you can, keep in touch with us. I know with many of you, I'm staying in touch, but I love hearing from you. I personally love to also hear how your careers are developing and changing. So wherever you are in your wine journey, please let us know what you're doing, where are you at, if you're writing, when you moving to places, just let us know, drop a line, because we love to hear from you.